Sitaram, namaste, good afternoon. Continuing more of my stories, the mouse, the frog, and the hawk. A mouse and a frog struck up a friendship. They were not well mated, for the mouse lived entirely on land, while the frog was equally at home on land or in the water. In order that they might never be separated, the frog tied himself and the mouse together by the leg with a piece of thread. As long as they kept on dry land, all went fairly well, but coming to the edge of the pool, the frog jumped in, taking the mouse with him, and began swimming about and croaking with pleasure. The unhappy mouse, however, was soon drowned and floated about on the surface in the wake of the frog. There he was spied by a hawk, who pounced down on him and seized him in his talons. The frog was unable to loose the knot which bound him to the mouse, and thus was carried off along with him and eaten by the hawk. Okay, it's not funny, but it's interesting. The Boy and the Nettles. A boy was gathering berries from a hedge with it when his hand was stung by a nettle. Smarting with the pain, he ran to tell his mother and said to her between his sobs, "I only touched it ever so lightly, mother. That's just why you got stung, my son. If you had grasped it firmly, it wouldn't have hurt you in the least." I didn't know that about nettles. Well, I'm not going to stay. I'll stay away from them anyways. The Peasant and the Apple Tree. A peasant had an apple tree growing in his garden, which bore no fruit, but merely served to provide a shelter from the heat for the sparrows and grasshoppers which sat and chirped in its branches. Disappointed at its barrenness, he determined to cut it down and went and fetched his axe for the purpose. But when the sparrows and the grasshoppers saw what he was about to do, they begged him to spare it and said to him, "If you destroy the tree, we shall have to seek shelter elsewhere, and you will no longer have our merry chirping to enliven your work in the garden." He, however, refused to listen to them and set to work with a will to cut through the trunk. A few strokes showed that it was hollow inside and contained a swarm of bees and a large swarm of honey. Delighted with his find, he threw down his axe and saying, "The old tree is worth keeping after all." Utility is most men's test of worth. The Jackdaw and the Pigeons. A jackdaw is a gray and black bird related to a crow. A jackdaw, watching some pigeons in a farmyard, was filled with envy when he saw how well they were fed and determined to disguise himself as one of them in order to secure a share of the good they enjoyed. So he painted himself white from head to foot and joined the flock, and so long as he was silent, they never suspected that he was not a pigeon like themselves. But one day he was unwise enough to start chattering, when they at once saw through his disguise and pecked him so unmercifully that he was glad to escape and join his own kind again. But the other jackdaws did not recognize him in his white dress and would not let him feed with them, but drove him away. And so he became a homeless wanderer for his pains. Last one I'm going to read is the Jupiter and the Tortoise. Jupiter was about to marry a wife and determined to celebrate the event by inviting all the animals to the banquet. They all came except for the tortoise, who did not put in the appearance, much to Jupiter's surprise. So when he next saw the tortoise, he asked him why he had not been at the banquet. "I don't care for going out," said the tortoise. "There's no place like home." Jupiter was so much annoyed by this reply that he decreed that from that time forth the tortoise should carry his house upon his back and never be able to get away from home even if he wished to. Have a great day.